get some background to helping with cryptozoology, so I got my biology. And decided that I was going to do some research into black panthers in North America. If anybody knows anything about black panthers, they're not supposed to exist in North America. Just kind of, yeah, everybody kind of rolls their eyes. They're like, yeah, I see them.
Right.
They're not supposed to exist. And I also did a lot of field work with Bigfoot over the years. And if you know anything about cryptozoology was based off of what Bernard Rugelman's, I think it was in 1955, kind of coined the phrase cryptozoology. And it has to do with biological animals that have not been scientifically observed or scientifically, we're not saying that they actually exist, or maybe they once existed and now they're considered to be extinct. And we're not sure whether they're around or not. So that's cryptozoology. It's an offshoot of zoology. In 1983, I think it was, the term cryptid was actually coined. I can't remember, I think it was Wells was the name of the guy. And that's what we call the animals. So cryptozoology is all biologically based. We're looking at animals, flesh and blood animals. So at that time, cryptozoology had nothing to do with, and wouldn't have anything to do with the paranormal. If you look at the BFRO and the BFRO's Bigfoot reports, they will omit anything that has to do with anything paranormal. Even though all Bigfoot investigators know there's weird stuff that happens. Now, in the early 1960s, late 50s, early 60s, there was a guy by the name of Sam Gordon who started in Pennsylvania noticing that there were strange things that were happening. Like UFO reports, Bigfoot reports, sometimes hauntings, different things like that they seem to be overlapping. And they call it, a lot of these times they call these live strange weird things that would happen simultaneously together. And this started where we would have a lot of intermingling of all of these different things. But still yet, cryptozoology was flesh and blood, and they didn't want anything to do with paranormal. The paranormal didn't want anything to do with cryptozoology or UFOs, and UFOs didn't want anything to do with the other two. So everybody kind of stayed the same. They're all there on the corner. They should never meet. Well, the problem was they did all the time. One of the best examples I can come up with is probably orbs. Who in here has ever seen an orb? Okay, all right. So an orb is often considered to be in the paranormal realm spirit, correct? Okay. The problem being is that orbs show up a lot of times in Bigfoot investigations or cryptid investigations. And if you break it down, an orb is actually an unidentified flying object. Okay? So it crosses all three of those. So that becomes a problem. So if you're in cryptozoology and you have an orb, what do you do with it? You pass it on to somebody in the paranormal field. You pass it on to somebody who's in the UFO field. What do you do with it? And if these three fields don't talk, then what do you do? So a few years back, I got to thinking about that, and it really bugged me. And I thought, what if we passed them along to our next generation? And what kind of leaps and bounds, if any, have we made in cryptozoology, in the paranormal field, and in ufology? Ufology has actually done the best out of the three. And I thought, what if we reinvent this just a little bit? What if we just take and we say, okay, instead of cryptid, the word cryptid, we'll use anomaly. Because if you think about Bigfoot, it's an anomaly. It's something that should not be there, and it's an outlier to what we know as far as reality, right? Okay. So then if you look at orbs are anomalies. Ghosts are anomalies. UFOs are anomalies. All these different things are anomalies. So if you want to take all of it and put it under one study, you're going to have to give it a name. So I gave it Anomalogy. Okay. Scientific study of anomalies that falls under the heading of either cryptozoology, paranormal, or UFOs. Makes it simple. That way we don't have to fight between ourselves and say, it's cryptozoology, it's paranormal, it's this. One thing we need to take into account too, ruffles and feathers. Paranormal, most people who are studying the paranormal aren't actually studying the paranormal, they're studying the supernatural. Paranormal is an offshoot of parapsychology. Parapsychology is actually the study of people who claim to or believe to have telekinetic powers or psychic powers. Paranormal studies then have to do with that. Okay. When we're looking at ghosts, we're actually looking at supernatural, so supernatural stuff. And everybody's like, okay, Robert, that's fine, you're splitting hairs. Nobody's going to go rename all their teams, take paranormal and put supernatural. No, I understand that. But the weird thing is, these things matter. These different details matter, especially whenever we're looking at doing research and doing investigation and gathering evidence. Whenever somebody comes up and they tell you a story about how they encountered Bigfoot, you find it very interesting, don't you? Most people do. That's what all of these podcasts, including mine, are about. Is somebody being able to tell different stories about what they encountered. However, if we look at it from a scientific point of view, like I do, then we want to see the evidence. So we're looking for tracks, hair samples, blood samples, scan samples, photographs, videos, whatever we can come up with to help build a database, because the database is important. Just like if a police investigator or an FBI investigator was to go in and investigate a crime, you wouldn't want them simply going by hearsay. Because hearsay can put the wrong person in prison, put the wrong person in jail. You want real evidence. You want real physical evidence. So we have a lot of investigators, unfortunately, and I'm not talking about anybody in particular, who probably aren't following proper protocols or proper procedures. So I thought, wouldn't it be good if we started a process or started a science, Anomalogy, which I happen to have on hand, and we'll start going through and we'll start teaching and we'll start demonstrating, okay, how do you cast traps? If you come across Bigfoot traps, how do you cast them properly? What if they're in the sand? What if they're in the gravel? What is the proper procedure to do this? What if you come across a hair sample? How would you know to gather the hair sample properly? How would you know how to gather the blood sample properly? If we come across with something that's a training manual or a good way to do this so that we can pass it along to the next generation so that they can start to make some headway, it would matter. Because if you look at cryptozoology, okay, so it started in 1950, whenever it was given its name, but it actually started way before that. What headway has it made? It really hasn't made it. Cryptozoology likes to claim that they've discovered a lot of different things. As soon as you see something about the okapi, or you see the mountain gorilla, or you see the coelacanth, something like that, okay, great. Cryptozoology likes to say, well, we discovered that. No, they didn't. It wouldn't be cryptozoologists who discovered the coelacanth. It was Japanese fishermen. It wasn't a cryptozoologist who discovered the okapi. It was, I believe it was the French explorer. And the same thing happened with the mountain gorilla. Okay. So we haven't made any yet. We haven't made any headway in paranormal investigations. We've gotten a lot of cool photographs. We've gotten a lot of cool videos. But have we gotten an origins of what's happening? What data have we collected so that we can start to answer questions? And what questions are we asking that are relevant that haven't been asked 100 times? What documentation are we doing? So this is about organizing things. Organizing things so that we have something, again, I'm going to repeat myself a lot of times, databases, so that we can put this on whatever website and we can pass it along and say, Ken wants to get on there and he wants to say, okay, what information do we have on ghosts in, these kinds of houses in this town? And we have a database because it matters, because we need that information to pass along. Because what we have is we have a lot of unorganized investigators who are sitting on information that they aren't necessarily sharing. It needs to be shared amongst all groups. That way we're all working together instead of working against them. Anomalogy for me is one of those things that I think I've been working on for a long time. And it's, like I said, it's an offshoot of cryptozoology that allows us to take into account all these different things that we've been setting aside and not dealing with. Like whenever we talked about Bigfoot up here, that was a perfect example of what I mean with anomalogy. The question where we talked about the paranormal influence or the paranormal things that happen with Bigfoot. And they don't necessarily get addressed. Like we talk about horror or the sound, the rocks being or different things like that that you can't necessarily explain. Because we also see the same thing happen in paranormal situations. There might be a paranormal situation where rocks are getting thrown. And it's inside of a building where most likely there's not a big. What is the cause of that? So anyway, there's a lot going on with that. I want to see if you guys have any questions first of all. Do you have any questions so far with where I'm at? As far as entomology and what the idea is behind it? Go ahead.
Is there very many studies where they do cross the borders? I thought a lot about that one. Why don't they study several of them together?
Yeah, there actually is. There are a lot of, but that's what I'm saying, like with hordes, there's a lot of correlation between one or the other, or, even into UFO. Like I said, Stan Winston back in the 60s was looking at UFOs in Pennsylvania, and right alongside that, you were having Bigfoot sightings that were happening. Well, now are we saying that Bigfoot has something to do with UFOs, or are they simply happening at the same time? Are there these hotspots where all kinds of different things are happening? And who's collecting the information? Who's who's doing what with the information? How organized are we? Because I feel like right now we're not doing anything with it, are we? Not really. And we can do better because I think we need it. Right? That's like the questions. We ask the same questions over and over in cryptozoology and ufology. When do we start to ask different questions? Our next generation needs better better questions. And we have to be able to pass it along. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That's the heart of anomalogy, is that we see these different things that are occurring that you could say it's both cryptozoology, it's both paranormal, it's both UFO, there's all kinds of stuff happening. So who do we hand it off to? We need something that is going to cover all those bases at once. Of course. Right, right. And it may be that it's something unified. And it may be that as we gather that information and properly pass that information along, that we can come up with it, but we're not even collecting the data properly right now. So, yeah, exactly. That's why we haven't made any headway. So, if we start to collect the data properly, and we maybe can start to answer some questions. Yeah. Right. And we have, let's look at it. I mean, we have a lot of information as far as what the origin. We just talked about it. When we're not even really collecting enough information to start asking questions. So, you know, we work on getting it to get to that stage. We constantly are either biased in whatever our question is. You know, one is going on right now. I don't want to admit it. The Nephilim is super popular in the world right now. Because of all the scientific basis, if you look at it scientifically. But I mean, then there's also just equally, there's the idea of the gorilla, you know, what am I want to say? I want to say, I can't pick the mic. Anyway, so then you got that. You can get into other beliefs where maybe they say, well, they believe they come from trolls or something like that. There's all kinds of different beliefs. But yeah, but not a one of them is based on evidence. So if we're basing it off of evidence, then we're going to come up with completely different hypotheses. But here's the problem. If I've gathered evidence, if Brian's gathered evidence, Kim's gathered evidence, and none of us speak, is it doing good? Right. So we have to start being able to share that information. There has to be a lot of communication. Yeah, exactly. You had a question?
Mike.
What did he say?
Mike.
Is it scary looking for Bigfoot? It can be sometimes. It depends.
They can't hear me. Is that what it is?
Can we do this?
Yeah.
That might be a headed. Or would it look worse if you did?
It is, it really is. What you were talking about is absolutely true. Where you see with the boat community, people who are serious investigators, where you have MUFON, Yeah, they actually do exactly what I'm talking about with entomology. The problem is cryptozoology doesn't have that same thing. You're right. You have a group, and in the paranormal world too. And I think the problem is not necessarily the true investigators and the researchers as much as it is the people who are just uh, yeah, thrill seekers trying to entertain people. And I think sometimes they stumble across something that's real and it's difficult to take it as real because it wasn't it wasn't presented by the right person. Yeah. Any other questions about it?
Yeah, Robert,
Yes.
can you hold the mic a little bit or speak louder into the mic?
A little bit closer.
That's
like
perfect. Seriously, we can't hear you.
Well, I'm sorry because I absolutely hate microphones.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
I feel like it's a
Live stream couldn't hear
I
you,
feel
so I
like
was
it's
like,
a
we'll figure it
terrible
out.
karaoke act.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Maybe there's UFOs that fly down and visit, and maybe there's a haunted house, but they just don't accept the fact that there's a dog man walking around in Oklahoma where they live.
I think it's the opposite of that. I think it is that there is an overwhelming amount of creepypasta out there, and just these stories that unfortunately a lot of people believe are fact because they're presented as fact, which is a detriment to everything that all the work that we try to do. And if we could figure out how to put an end to it, we would tomorrow. But the problem is the YouTube clicks, the TikTok clicks, that's where all the money is. What can I do to scare you? And if you presented it as what it is, just entertainment, that'd be fine. But the problem is they don't. They present it as this is real. You should be afraid of this thing. Sasquatch attacked the whole carload of kids. This is what happened. So I think it's the opposite of people not being willing to believe. I think it's more people overwhelmingly wanting to believe in something like this. When you get into dogman, which has become a hot topic in the past 10 years, you have a group who really, really, really want werewolves to be real, and that's a problem. Uh, and then again, it's bias. So one of the things that we want to work with Anomalogy is removing bias. Remove the bias, remove all the stories, remove all the baloney, and let's just work with evidence. Start with the evidence, forget the origins of whatever it is, whatever the stories are behind it. What does the tracks tell me? What does the hair tell me? What does the DNA tell me? This will lead me to that answer of what this origin of this thing is. Instead of deciding what the origin is and trying to make all of these facts, all this evidence to fit. Because right now that's what we're doing. Right now we've got cryptozoology and the paranormal so mixed together in the wrong way that you've got bias answer that came way before any of this fit in, and we said, well, this is what it has to be. It has to be this, and that's why, because of this answer that I came up with ahead. And usually it's based on some, unfortunately, religious belief, personal belief, or something like that, instead of letting the evidence lead us to where it needs to go. That'd be like a murder case, and you decided Billy Bob's the one who killed him. And now I'm going to make all the evidence fit that Billy Bob killed him. It might be, but we don't want to do that. Okay?
we have a TikTok culture. I want it nowadays. I want 30 seconds of, what can really, and then I'm gonna swipe. I want the next one. You better get my attention at fast. And the thing is that any investigator who's been in the field and done any big stuff, done any paranormal stuff, you may be out there for days. You may do, 2 or 3 investigations, or 4 or 5 investigations, and nothing happens. And then all of a sudden, the next one you do, you hit the jackpot. Or you might go back to the place where the first time, and all of a sudden, there's all kinds of evidence. It just doesn't work. You see these shows where every time they go out, they're getting evidence. That's because they made up the evidence. Right.
Yeah, I may have.
And that's what we're working for, is trying to come up with something much more scientifically based.
So we were talking about series about here's some stuff that I recommend.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think there's way too much false information out there too. Again, just because it's kind of a thorn in my side sometimes working with it, the dog man stuff. Again, you get a lot of the werewolf stories, you get a lot of the stuff, well, did it have a tail, did it not have a tail, did it attack, did it do this, did it do that? We're nowhere near being able to work up all this, and where Dogman came from and all that. We can't even get, Brian and I were talking about this, we can't even get decisive tracks to where we can say, okay, in the Bigfoot community, we can say, okay, this is a Bigfoot track. This is what I'm looking for down the road. Yeah. Do what? Yeah. There's a little of it, but not a whole lot. Then you see, like I was talking about the photographs, where there's a lot of photographs that are supposed to be Dogman tracks, and they were completely different than the 40 you looked at before. So, but when pretty standard, when you're looking at Sasquatch tracks, what you're looking for. Everybody knows it's on everything. There's like 5 items in here that have a Bigfoot track on. What it looks like. But if I go find me a Dogman track, no, you're gonna think it probably looks like a dog. But again, getting good information. That's what Anomalogy is working for. And we're at the very beginning stages of trying to get this set up. I'm working on this book for Anomalogy 101, and it's probably going to be a series because that depth that is what I need to do. Basically setting it up as a textbook series for anybody who's interested in the future. Any other questions? Ma'am, didn't you have a question? Okay. So let's say that you're an eyewitness to something that took place. You see a creature of some kind. Okay. So I can start off with what you tell me. You give me a description of what happened, the time, the place, the weather, the phase of the moon. I can look up the barometric pressure, all that stuff. This is all relative information that I can put down. Then I can investigate the area, and I can see if there are tracks. If I can find tracks, I can cast the tracks. If I can recover hair, if it was a mammal, if I recover hair, then I recover more evidence. Now, I take that, and I can hold on to that, and I can put a file, and I can pass that along to other groups. Okay? And then if it happens again with somebody else or with you, then I do the same process again. I'm building a database. That's where you start to build a theory. When you've got one thing that happened, no, I'm not going to build a theory off of the very beginning. In gathering evidence, you don't gather the evidence based off of the theory. You build a theory off of the evidence. Nope, you don't. You're right, you don't, because eyewitnesses are terrible evidence. You absolutely don't. But I can use you in your eyewitness statement as corroborating evidence to corroborate. If you say, I saw Bigfoot run behind that oak tree and dive behind that hill, and I go over and I look and I find tracks behind that oak tree, that hill, then that corroborates your story, and it all deals together as evidence. But if I just take it as, okay, well, she saw Bigfoot and I never go investigate. Number one, I'm a really crappy investigator and researcher. And two, I just took you at your word, which is not worth anything, quite frankly. No offense. I mean it towards everybody. Any other questions?
Yeah.
But see, the reason I wanted to do this way instead of doing a PowerPoint, because I want to get you guys involved. Because it's important that you're involved. It's important that you were here, you're the ones who make ParaCons happen. It's not just us. We can show up and talk to each other, and it doesn't matter. But if we get to talk to you, and you involved, and you get interested, and you got input in this, it matters. Because I may be talking to the next cryptozoologist, or the next cryptozoologist, or the next paranormal investigator who's out there. We're going to make a difference. And we want to work to build this community better so that it works better. That's the idea behind it.
And if things go right, eventually we're not starting that's it. Yeah, just make sure it comes hopeful or something.
And I'm good with that. I prefer that.
But we can be a little bit simple.
We'll figure it out.
Some of the different things that are coming through, we're not skeptical enough.
Sure.
I've often said that, an eyewitness makes a horrible investigator, and an investigator makes a horrible eyewitness. Because, an eyewitness will already assume this is what it was. And an investigator will, never understand the wonder of what it could be. So, any other questions? Because this isn't really a huge concept or anything that big or that new. It's pulling from the ideas of law enforcement and the FBI. If you watched anything like CSI or if you watched anything like Criminal Minds or anything like that, it's kind of building on that. Where we take the information and maybe we can come up with an idea of where Bigfoot is going to be next. Because we've collected the data. We know what their behavior is. We know what they eat because we share that information. We know what another cryptid might do, or we know what's causing a haunting in a certain area. Or maybe it's not a haunting, maybe it's something else. But we don't know until we start to work together on all these different things. And that's the idea of Anomalogy, is to bring all three of those together. Because just like we said, they all seem to be related.
Next year we do that.
That is the hard part. That is the hard part. Is getting people to trust and getting people to work together. Lead by example. That's the only thing I can say. Lead by example. If you lead by example, Brian leads by example, if I lead by example, and we put it out there, and we say, okay, this is what I did, this is the investigation, and this is the evidence I got. We put it out there, and it opens it up for that scrutiny, that scientific scrutiny, where you might say, okay, you did that, but did you do this? And I'm big enough of a person to go, you know what, I didn't think about that. Let me go back and check it. Or let me make sure that I put that in the protocols to do that again. That's another thing, developing protocols, developing procedures. That way, the way I attack something is the way the next person attacks something. We go through a checklist. And these are the different things that we have to do. These are the things we want to make sure to avoid so that we avoid different biases and stuff. It's done all the time in labs. It's done all the time in science, different scientific procedures. It's done all the time with MUFON and different groups like that, with UFOs. It's what we do. You know, where were you at? What was the barometer? What was the clouds like? What was the phase of the moon? Yeah.
I can have a lot of them. Here we are. I'm sure.
It's going to be fun. Yeah, we're going to do some of it. But we're not going to it's fun.
Yeah. And I see a lot of it in the community. And when I say the community, I mean all three communities together. I see that we want to kind of pull together. I just want to give you a name. I want to give you something to where you can start calling that. Because in a lot of ways, cryptozoology is dead. Because cryptozoology is, okay, looking for the thylacine. Thylacine is, anybody knows what thylacine is, that's, you know, a marsupial, they call it marsupial micro, Tasmanian micro. That's looking for the thylacine, it's looking for other animals that we theorize are still around. Flesh and blood. Cryptozoology, in that sense, in a lot of ways, is really dead because there's a lot of the paranormal has pulled into the stuff. Because Bigfoot, Dogman, pale crawlers, all of these things are all over YouTube. These are the hot topics. These are the ones that are pulling people in. And if they're pulling people in and they're getting people interested, and they're interesting topics that may actually clue in something about our reality, shouldn't we do something to address it properly? Maybe they are related to UFOs. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're related to the paranormal. Maybe they're not. But right now, all we're doing is spinning our wheels because all that's out there is a bunch of creepy pasta. We have to start getting some things in the room. Any last questions, guys? Because I'm not going to hold you. This was get you familiarized with the idea of anomalogy. I hope it makes sense to you. It's something I'm going to continue to work on. Like I said, I'm working on some books on the series. And hopefully I'll have something, you know, a little bit more in the future to present to you that, you know, maybe not just bore you to death. But anyway. He makes it things so. Thanks a whole bunch. Hey, everybody, thank you so
Thank you, Robert. Make sure, if you haven't yet, head over to his table, Monstrous there. Check out his book, and by a chance to win one of the Monstrous ParaCon poster. It's super cool if you haven't seen it yet. I kind of want it myself. If I run past it really fast, I can snag it. In 10 minutes, we'll start the presentation on the history of UFO photography and how to photograph and record it. I apologize earlier for having announced it far too soon. In the next 10 minutes or so, go ahead and get you a snack and a drink, check out the raffles, check out Robert's table and his book, it's fantastic. He also offered us a book up for raffles, so you can go ahead and throw your name in for a free book from him, it's also signed. And I'll see you back here in about 10 minutes.
After Enzo's speech.